hippies, and hallucinogens. The Summer of Love in 1967 was the peak of the hippie movement. And I'm particularly interested in hippies because both my parents grew up in the era. They're pretty much hippies, and so I've grown up on the music and the ideals of social and political reform that the era stood for. In particular, I've always been interested with the Summer of Love. My goal is to inform you about San Francisco's Summer of Love through a timeline examination of its historical background, the actual event itself, and its consequences. And to give you a better idea of what the Summer of Love is all about, I'm going to show you a little clip. Oh, no sound.
Bottom right of your YouTube video.
Ah. This became like the anthem for all hippies migrating to San Francisco. Okay, so to understand the Summer of Love itself, you have to understand the historical context. So the baby boomers were children of the 1950s, and as you can see, there was a huge increase in birth rate from the 1950s to the 1960s. In the 1960s, there were like 90 million Americans living under the age of 25. That's nearly half the generation. And a lot of these baby boomers identified themselves as hippies. Hippies were against the conformity and the materialism of the 1950s. They were anti-Vietnam, anti-corporate America, and they loved to get high and listen to music. So the hippies also really were interested in social reform, and they wanted a free-loving community, and they believed they could find this free-loving community in California. So this sparked a huge migration to Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco in the 1960s. The main drug of the hippie movement was LSD. It altered their states of consciousness, and they were all pretty in love with LSD. And the hippies held their first be-in on January 14th, 1967 in Golden Gate Park, San Francisco. And 35,000 people gathered to listen to music, poetry, literature, and share different ideologies and philosophies. Newsweek said that the be-in captured all-embracing love. It was nonviolent, mystical, and bizarre. So the human being is also really important because it signified the first event in the Summer of Love. So we can break down the Summer of Love by June and July. June was really the high point of the Summer of Love. It was the good times. The hippies were really into spirituality, and they looked to this Swami who came from India and shared his ideas in the Hare Krishna mantra. Allen Ginsberg, who was a really famous poet, beat poet, and hippie hero at the time, said, "We sang Hare Krishna all evening. It was absolutely great, an open thing. It was the height of the Haight-Ashbury spiritual enthusiasm." There was also a huge explosion of music in June of the Summer of Love. The Beatles released their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which is obviously very famous, and the Monterey Pop Festival occurred. On the first day, 35,000 people came, and on the second, there were 60,000, all gathering to listen to music. It was really important because it was the starting point for so many famous artists like the Grateful Dead, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, etc. Okay, in July, the Summer of Love really took the turn for the worst. At this point, 50,000 to 100,000 people had gathered, so it was overcrowded. Everyone was really high on LSD, and they were experiencing really bad trips. There was no food, no money. William Hedgepath for Look magazine described it as filthy, litter-strewn dope fortress with half a dozen hippies lying in various stages of drug stupor. Finally, the death of the hippie occurred on October 6, 1967. This was when the hippies staged a mock funeral signifying the end of the Summer of Love. However, the legacy lives on. The Summer of Love had a tremendous musical and social impact on our nation. As I stated before, there were so many artists that emerged from this time: Jimi Hendrix, The Dead, Joplin, The Who, Simon & Garfunkel. Also, the Monterey Pop Festival laid the groundwork for Woodstock, which would come 2 years later, and the second Summer of Love in the UK, 1988 and 1989, which is the beginning of the rave culture. Also, all the music festivals you see today, like Bonnaroo, Lollapalooza, Coachella, those are all based on the Summer of Love. It also had a tremendous social impact. It laid the groundwork for future counterculture movements, civil rights movements, gay rights, women's rights, etc. And on fashion, you know, hippie fashion, still in style, and organic food, local farm markets, yoga, alternative medicine, all came from the Summer of Love. The events leading up to, during, and after the Summer of Love are crucial to understanding that time period in our history. It was really a symbol for youth counterculture and for reform, and it was really a reflection of its era. So although the Summer of Love came to an end, its musical, political, and social impact on our culture is everlasting. Thank you.